All right, so I guess that you can hear me based on the way that the sound is bouncing off the walls. Thank you all for coming here. I know it's the last session of the day on, what day is this? This is Tuesday. It's been a long week. It's the last session of the day, Tuesday before Stomp, so thank you for coming. And so my name is Blair. I work at Martian Craft. I'm one of our lead Mac and iOS engineers. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is notification handling on WatchKit. So why are we focusing specifically on WatchKit? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, notifications are becoming one of our key interaction modes on the watch. I don't know about the rest of you, but most of the time I go to do something on my watch, it's because something's tapping me on the wrist and I want to see what it is. However, this talk particularly was inspired by some difficulties we had on real-world projects. And those difficulties came about because there are a lot of limitations in WatchKit. You cannot think about it the same way you think about UIKit. Specifically, WatchKit gives us many fewer hooks into introspecting the state of our app to figure out where things are at. If you're building an iPhone app off of your standard controls, view controllers, modals, navigation controllers, you can figure out where you are in the app. You can figure out how to get from point A to point B. How many view controllers you need to pop to push it off, push on your new view controllers. You don't really get to do that on WatchKit. In WatchKit 3, or watchOS 3, all we can really ask for is what our root interface controller is. Getting a little bit more info, they're finally telling us what the topmost interface controller is. But we have no way of knowing what's between our topmost interface controller and our root interface controller. Additionally, on the iPhone, we've got a lot of ways that we can set up our view controllers. We can do direct instantiation, we can do segues from storyboards, we can instantiate, with our segue, we can do a prepare for segue, we can grab a reference to the instance, do direct dependency injection there. On the Apple Watch, really the only configuration point we have is away from context, and the various methods that can trigger the instantiation of our view controllers and the awaking, of our interface controllers and the awaking of our interface controllers. Now, if you were at Jeff's session, on Sunday, he talked a bit about this. He showed what happened if you try to directly instantiate an interface controller. Things kind of go boom. So, not an option for us. Part of this presentation, I built a demo app, and that demo app is going to be up on GitHub. I'll have the link at the end, and I'll share that in the presentation Slack as well. The demo app is based on the real-world application that we had problems with. And that application, bit specific to the domain, it's a dual-mode app. The idea was you'd have a primary watch and a secondary watch, two different users. They would communicate with each other. And the specific UI, there would be specific UI, notifications, and notification actions for the two modes. The app was built on top of the iOS 10 user notification framework, so it's modern, it's using the newest techniques. We're kind of ignoring the fact that up through iOS 9 and watchOS 2, we were using the old local notification and push notification APIs. In the demo, we support multiple sources of notifications. We've got push notifications. Don't have a server set up, but I'm using the excellent NW Pusher app. Great for debugging your notifications. We also have phone scheduled local notifications and watch scheduled notifications. And you can just see here the overall structure of what the storyboard looks like in the interface controller for the watch app. So talk a little bit about configuring your notifications in general. If you've worked with user notification framework before, this is going to be old hat. The idea is you set up your notification categories. Within those categories, you set up your notification actions. And the actions are the up to, I believe, 4 buttons that appear underneath your notification that allow a user to tap on them and do something particular. And you set your categories on the current notification center, and you can do this for both your phone and your watch. I'm going to quickly jump over to Xcode and forget that I'm not mirroring. Hold on a sec. Hey, there we go. Can you see that? Do we need it bigger? All right. So this is just a simple registration notification class. This is a helper class that I've got. This is running on my watch. And what we're doing here is we're setting up our notification actions. You can see I've got a call action, a modal action, and a background action. For the call and the modal action, I'm specifying the foreground option. By default, notification actions run in the background. Your app doesn't come to the front. So foreground lets us opt into that. There are two other options you can specify. You can specify an option to require that you need user authentication to do something. That's implied for a foreground application, or foreground action, but this lets you add a little bit of extra safety check to your background actions. The other option is just a destructive option that displays your action with the red text, so the user knows that something bad may happen, something unrecoverable will be done. Make sure they want to do it. So then we've got our categories we're setting up. I'm setting up a primary mode category. That's for that when the watch is running in primary mode. And I'm saying that has three actions: our call action, our modal action, and our background action. Secondary category for the secondary watch mode has no action, so there are going to be no buttons underneath that notification. And I also, just for the purposes of the demo, I've got a repeating category here. And I'm setting the custom dismiss action option. What that means is that if a user chooses to dismiss our notification, swipe it away on the iPhone, you hit the X to get rid of it, our app will actually get called. By default, we don't get notified. Some places where you might want to use this from the notification category, you might figure out this is for something that will repeat. So in the handler for the custom dismiss action, we'll cancel that repetition so we stop bothering the user with notifications. So this is running on the phone app. I also have a version of this for the watch app. So again, you can see I'm setting up some actions. I've got a local action. You know, the identifier is the same as the identifier for the, modal action, and that modal identifier is the same as the modal identifier for the phone. I've also got a text input notification action here. This is one of those notifications that allow you to input text directly without bringing your app to the front. So on the watch, you can get the emoji picker, you can dictate. Again, I've got a primary mode here and a repeating mode category. Now, depending on your perspective, this is either brilliant or terrible. On the brilliant side of things, I'm reusing the same identifier. So in my processing code, I don't have to differentiate between whether this is an action that came into the watch or the phone. On the madness side, your actions are determined by the device that receives the notification. So these primary mode actions here, that's not going to override a notification that comes into your phone. A push notification comes into the phone, it's going to get the call, modal, and background action from the phone. There is no way that you can limit what shows up on your watch when it comes in from the phone. So you may have noticed on some apps, either your own or apps that you're using, you get a notification on your watch, you get actions that do nothing. That's why they do stuff on the phone. And there's just no way for developers to get rid of them. So jump back to Keynote. Let's see if I can do this now. Where did my cursor go? Keynote. I know, amateur move here. All right, made it back to Keynote. So we've got our categories set up. Now we want to figure out how they're going to look on the watch. You have three styles of notification display on the watch. We've got a generic style, a static style, and a dynamic style. Generic style is just what you get if you have nothing set up. Very similar to if you don't have an app on your watch. You just get something that looks exactly like what the generic display looks like on the phone. This is what you get with the gray banner text. Pretty straightforward. This is what you get for free. Your static display is something that you configure at design time. It can only contain local resources. Static doesn't have to be boring. You can put images in here, but there's no display time configuration. The only UI element that gets updated is that one text label there on your right, my left. No, wait. My right or left. That one text label, that gets replaced by your notification body. So either something you configure in your local notification or something that comes in your APN payload. And then the third option is dynamic. This is actually the one that you get to configure. And this is done within a subclass of WK User Notification Interface Controller. And there are a lot of long class names and protocol names involved with notifications. They're right in the slides. I will probably butcher at least one when I say it. Now, I'm going to show that subclass, an example of the subclass on the next slide. One thing to know, you have a very limited amount of time to configure this. I've never actually hit it in normal use, doing normal things like maybe running one network request to pull down some extra information, so it doesn't seem terribly draconian. But if you do hit that time limit, the system is going to kill you and just fall back to your static notification. And even if you do have a dynamic interface for your notification, don't skimp on your static notification. Users are going to see it. The dynamic interface is only displayed in the long look. So if the users pull up your notification via Notification Center, they're going to get your static UI. Additionally, in low power mode, the system's going to fall back to static UI to try and keep your battery alive as long as possible. So just here, our little screenshot at the top, this is both a static and a dynamic take on an interface for a notification. And then below that, we've got a screenshot of the inspector where you can see setting the name of the category to primary mode. So that lines up with the primary mode notification category. And that's how WatchKit determines what UI to use for your notification. So inside of our dynamic notification, we're going to want to populate it. And this is the subclass of WK User Notification Interface Controller. There's one method you have to care about. Did receive with completion. You're going to do whatever setup you need to do in here, and then at the end, you're going to call your completion handler. See here, I'm calling it with custom. Custom means show me the dynamic interface. If for some reason you want to fall back to the static interface, you look at your notification, you say, I don't need to customize it, call this with default. Like I said, you can do stuff like networking requests and whatnot because that is an escaping call. So it'll be alive whenever your asynchronous operation completes. So now we know how to make our notifications so they look how we want them to look. What do we do once a user interacts with our notification? Well, the bulk of notification processing is handled by something that implements the UN User Notification Center Delegate Protocol. And this has to be configured before your app finishes launching, and that's both on the iPhone and the Apple Watch. So on the iPhone, on both, it'll be in essentially the application did finish launching delegate method. There are two cases for handling notifications. The one we most commonly think of is when the application is open from our notification. And the other case is when the notification is received while our application is open. So we'll start by talking about the common case. We've got one method in the Notification Center delegate that we have to implement. That's the User Notification Center did receive with completion handler. The completion handler, my theory is mostly important for when you're processing a background notification, background action, so that you can tell the system you're done with it. And one important thing to note about background actions, those are processed on the device where the notification was received. So if you're only dealing with push notifications, you don't have to worry about that on your watch. So for instance, in the Twitter app or Facebook app, you've got an action to favorite. You tap that on your watch, that code's being executed on your phone. So, the second argument here we're getting is response. This is explaining how your notification, how the user interacted with your notification. And that's going to have, among other things, a reference to the original notification and an action identifier. So that action identifier is either going to be one of your custom action identifiers that we set up earlier, or one of the two system-specified identifiers. There's UN Notification Center Default Action Identifier. That's the one you get when the user taps on your notification body. And the second one is UN Notification Center Dismiss Action Identifier, and that is the optional one. That is the one you opt into for being notified when your user dismisses the notification. So you notice I kind of skimmed most of the details out of here. You can fill in what goes inside that comment there. It's going to be specific to your app, your implementation. You notice, however, I am explicitly checking for a non-empty identifier. And I just told you your identifier was going to be either one of yours or one of the system ones. There was one case where that wasn't true. There was a bug in WatchKit. In WatchKit, we found this in WatchKit, WatchOS 3.1. And it was fixed by 3.13. Never got a chance to try it in 3.1.1. That was the one that Apple put out for about 12 minutes before they pulled it. What would happen here was if you had a notification with a dynamic interface, if somebody tapped on the text of your notification, on the body of your notification, this would be called twice. The first time it would be called, you would get the correct default action identifier. The second time it would be called, you get an empty string. So if you naively assumed that your action identifier was either going to be one of your custom action identifiers, and if it wasn't the custom one, it would be the default one, you'd process your notification twice. May or may not be a big deal depending on what you're doing with notification, but you were doing something like refreshing your UI, you'd refresh it twice and it would look weird to your users. So what about the case of when we get a notification while our app is running? Well, there are really three things you can do here. You can ignore it, you can process it. Now in both these cases, if the notification is delivered to your phone, the notification will remain in Notification Center at this point, so it's something that we might want to deal with. Third thing we can do is we can actually display the notification. So just a quick little demo movie here showing those two options. First of all, notification is going to come in, and you can see we just navigated to the detail view for it. And in this case, is our secondary mode for the Watch app. Notification comes in, and we're electing to show it. So how do we do that? Well, we implement the other method in that UN User Notification Center delete. User Notification Center will present with completion handler. Method signature looks fairly similar to that first method I showed you. Two things to know. First of all, the second argument is a notification. It's not a notification response, because at this point there has been no response. Second thing is our completion handler actually takes an argument. That argument is the set of options for what we should do with it. So you can see here, walking through here, I've got some notifications that I'm going to say the sound in the alert, and that was that second one in the video where it appeared. In the second case here, I'm saying nothing. That means don't do anything. Don't show the user alert. And I'm also got what I call a clear notification command. That's actually just a static wrapper around a WC session message that we're sending the phone to clear. So then at the end, you call your completion handler, and you're all set. Almost. WatchOS 4. If you watch the sessions on WatchOS 4, if you played with WatchOS 4, you know Apple has adjusted the idea of the foreground application. So if your user is using your app, screen shuts off, your app's actually going to remain in the foreground for a bit. A few minutes, by default 2 minutes, and you can request up to 8. If a notification comes in that case, your watch is still in the foreground, this method's going to get called. So if you do this, if you say nothing, do nothing here, user's not going to know you got a notification. You're going to update your UI, or you're going to try and update your UI, user's not going to know about it. So that's something we have to think about. Simplest solution might just be to play the sound there. They'll hear the sound, they'll look, it'll be like they got a notification. One thing I noticed when I was testing this against WatchOS 4, when I would get a notification while my app was running, this method was actually being called 3 times. I don't know if it's something I did. I don't know if it's a bug in Beta 5. I was not brave enough to download Beta 6 the night before this presentation. I will do that. I will figure out, I will try to come up with a reduced test case and file a radar, or maybe we'll be lucky and it's already been fixed. Or maybe we'll be lucky and I'm just the one that screwed up. But hopefully, something to keep an eye on. Like I said, I definitely don't recall seeing that on WatchOS 3, so I think it's new to the betas. So then on the phone side, if we want to clear that notification out of the notification center, this is just the handler that I did for receiving that clear notification command. So, like I said, it's just a static representation of a WC message payload. Extract the notification identifier from it, and then on the phone's notification center, call remove delivered notifications. So that'll just take care of that, so if the user thinks that they won't be seeing stale notifications in their notification center anymore. If you've looked through the documentation for the interface controller class, you might have seen this handle action with identifier for method. So if you read the documentation, it tells you that this method gets called on your root interface controller when a notification action happens. And you would get the action identifier as the first argument, and the notification is the second argument. When I started looking into this, I thought this was going to be the solution to most of our problems. But I ended up having a couple of different problems with this. So first of all, like I said, it's only called on your root interface controller. If you've only got one interface controller, that's probably fine. If you've got a complex UI where you, like I said, maybe you have multiple hierarchical navigation stack, you've got three interface controllers on there, you can't really figure out where you are in the app when this is called. Secondly, your root interface controller isn't instantiated immediately when your app launches. So if your app launches in response to a notification, at least on WatchOS 3, there's no interface controller yet for this to be called on. So your notifications get dropped on the floor there. Like I said, that second argument is only the action identifier. If the action was a text input action, we lose the information about what text the user actually input, because that comes in as part of the payload of a UN text input notification response object, which is a subclass of UN, like I said, UN notification response. I think that's a class name there. And finally, this isn't called when our application's running. It's only called after notification action occurs. So we would end up missing anything that, we would end up missing all the stuff that I just showed processing in the previous notification center method and the notification center delegate method, and we might have to duplicate our logic to take care of this. So now we know how to get notified of notifications. Now we're going to do something with them. In my mind, there are really three ways we can process them. We can process them within the current state of the application. We can rebuild our application state around the notification, or we can deal with system URL triggers. We can also choose to do nothing. That's really just a subclass or a sub-variant of handling it in the current application state. So handling something in a current application state makes sense in two cases, essentially. Either when your app is a flat hierarchy, when you don't have questions about the state of your app, you really can't determine without doing a lot of manual bookkeeping, or in the cases where you're doing something that can be done regardless of the state of your app. And displaying a modal is actually a pretty good candidate for that, because you can display a modal on an interface controller regardless of whether your interface controller is frontmost or not. So that was a modal, I believe, unless I put the wrong moving in there. That was just displaying a modal in response to a notification action. So to do that, I put together just a little protocol that lets an interface controller define whether it can handle the notification and how it should handle it. If you wanted to, you could combine these down into one method that maybe have it return a bool with indicating whether or not you could handle it. But this was just the style that I chose. And then on the main interface, this is the implementation of handling it. You can see I'm just extracting the action identifier from the notification, and I'm doing a bit of sanity checking here. If application is configured as primary mode, and the category is a primary mode, and if the modal action, display the mode. And for the secondary mode, which wasn't in the video, but that's just a single screen app, again, do that same type of validation, and then just update our UI with the information from the notification. So what about requesting a clean state? It might seem a bit heavy-handed to tear down your entire UI and build up a new one. It's not something we would do on the iPhone. On the iPhone, we would pop, on a navigation stack, pop, push, figure out what we need to do. We can't really do that on WatchKit without a lot of manual bookkeeping code. And managing that code was kind of a pain because it seemed like Apple would adjust stuff between releases of WatchOS to try and improve performance and basically make it better for the user, but if you were doing things that they were probably recommending you not do, it would make your life happen. And then this is also going to be used in the case of somebody cold launching your app in response to a notification because that root interface controller won't be configured yet. One thing Apple hammers on when they talk about Watch apps is simplifying your experience. If you saw the WWDC session about the building of the WWDC Watch app, they talked about how in the first version it was everything that could technically be done on the watch, and how they winnowed it down every year to just what they felt was the core use case for somebody looking at something on their list. Simplifying your watch app doesn't just apply to the UI, it also applies to your app's overall structure. Now, I mentioned that this client app started off as a dual mode app. And it looked something like this. We had our root interface controller was defined as the undefined state, and then we had two other roots for each of the modes. And at launch, we would try to extract our mode from user default. If it wasn't there, we would try to extract it from a WC session message to the phone. So therefore, we've got the initial loading of the root interface control from the storyboard. Then we're immediately trying to do another one, possibly asynchronously if we're doing it by a WC session. And now if we're actually launching the app in response to a notification, we're maybe doing a third reload of the root interface controller right away. And that, I don't know if it was us losing track of things or if it was WatchKit not letting us doing that, but we would end up in states where we actually would have no root loaded. Something would give up. It was either us or WatchKit. Because root interface controller, it's not exactly synchronous. So if you call reload root interface controller and then immediately ask for your root interface controller, you're going to get nil. So it's not immediately there, and I suspect if you do it a couple of times in rapid succession, maybe that causes problems. So in the demo app, we actually did something like this. Again, we've got our root state with just the undefined mode. But this is actually done as a single interface that contains all three root states. And these are interface groups, and then we just toggle the visibility based on getting the mode. And again, this is a special case of building a dual mode app where the client says they want a single executable. May not apply to you, but it just shows an example of why you should consider simplifying your app structure, because it'll make your life easier going forward. So this is just kind of what a clean slate looks like. We're going to get a notification in here again, and we're going to tap on it. You can see we got that flash as a refresh, and then we push onto the stack. So the push animation is less than ideal, but I'll talk about that in a second. So I just created a little quick static structure for storing information about our notification. And this is going to go in as the context of our root controller. And I could have done this in the dictionary, but I wanted static typing. So in the awake with context method for our interface controller, I'm just going to stash this now. Because there are things we can't do yet. We cannot push a child interface controller onto the stack at this stage. We actually can't push it on until we're on screen. So I have to wait until did appear gets called. And at that point, I check to see if we've got a stored notification info, validate it, and then do the push. And that's why there was that little bit of animation there, because WatchKit, there's no way to say do an unanimated push. So again, limitations of the system. So the final bit of the final notification processing thing, the final bit of notification processing I want to do is calling the system URL trigger. And this is opening a TEL or an SMS URL. Not something you're probably going to want to do in most cases, but this was actually a specific client requirement. So it was something that we had to do. And you do that by calling the WK extension open system URL method. And it looks like this. Pretty straightforward. You've probably seen similar, maybe not from notification, but you've probably seen similar interactions in your apps. Now that looks like something that looks very similar to the displaying a modal I showed with regards to just using your existing app state. Maybe something we could do there? Well, not so fast. Bill the Cat says no. The sad truth is that system URL triggers don't play terribly well with others. In particular, if you call this open system URL method immediately after resuming your app, or immediately after pushing an interface controller onto your stack, your app gets wedged in this weird state. It's not frozen. If you long press on it, you'll get the bounce animation that says, there's no menu to display. And I haven't tried this on an interface with a menu, so I'm assuming you still get the no menu animation. But the call sheet doesn't appear, and your app doesn't respond to any other touches. However, if you close the app and then reopen it, your app is suddenly responsive again, and it's in the state that it was in before you tried to display the system URL sheet. So, what do? Well, we fall back on source of last resort, dispatch async after. And in this case, we're actually waiting a whole second. That might be a bit exaggerating in terms of presentation, but this isn't one of those cases where you're just doing a dispatch an async dispatch to get on to the next pass of the run mode. We actually have to wait a little bit of time to let WatchOS get to the state where it'll display this. And I tried a tenth of a second, and I tried shorter intervals, and they weren't quite long enough. And I should have tried this on WatchOS 4 yet. I should have. I tried doing it last night, and Xcode beta was refusing to install on my watch. So, fun times. Hopefully this is fixed. If not, I will do what I should have done months ago and file another radar. So the last thing that I want to talk about is dealing with attachments to notifications. So this is images, and specifically images, displaying images or some other media clip in your notification. I don't suppose there's anybody in here from MLB? All right, didn't think so, but figured I'd ask. I'm not picking on them. I love their app. I'm only seeing this because I have their app installed. But get this notification, and I would be getting these notifications for a month. It would say attachment 1 image. On the phone, I would see the image. Never would see the image on the watch. And this seemed to be a level of polish below what you would expect from Apple. So, started working on this client project with the dual mode app, got a second watch, would have both of them set up, and then on the second watch I started noticing this. Big, beautiful, bright image. And I was kind of trying to figure out what the heck was going on. You know, is it because it was a 38 versus a 42 millimeter watch? Is it because it was an original Apple Watch versus a Series 2 Apple Watch? And it took me a disturbingly long time to notice this. Without the image, circle icon, the app's installed. With the image, rounded rect squircle, that's the phone icon, no app installed. So in this case, this was mirroring the phone notification, whereas this was displaying a notification, apparently that it was getting from the watch app. So I kind of figured I had the handle on it. I was noticing some notifications on the watch that were actually coming in with image attachments. And then I installed watchOS 4 Beta, and I got this. I'm not running a pre-release version of this app. This is the App Store version of the app. You can see I've got the circle icon. I've got an image in my attachment now. And then I finally dawned on me what was going on with this particular app. These are the static interface notifications. These aren't dynamic. So in watchOS 3 in the static UI, apparently Apple wasn't giving us images. In watchOS 4, they were. And way back in the beginning when I talked about doing your static interface, I said you could tweak the layout, you could do anything you wanted locally. As far as I know, there's no control for controlling the positioning of that image, though. That seems to just go at the top of your notification, which is unfortunate, but that's how it goes. So what if you want a different UI? Or what if you want attachments inside of a watchOS 3 notification? Well, in that case, we're going to fall back, well not fall back, we're going to implement our dynamic notification. So back to our subclass of WK User Notification Interface Controller. This method again. So here we're just extracting our interface, our action identifier, our attachment identifier from our user info dictionary. And this is, however, whatever scheme you choose to communicate this info. And if you've dealt with attachments before, this logic is actually pretty similar to what you would do inside of your notification service extension. We can't read the attachment image that's downloaded by the service extension directly, because that's downloaded to your phone. You know, in this case, we're running something over here, and the attachment's over here. We could try doing a WC session message to your phone. My concern there would be that if it's in the state where it's not actively connected, it might take too long to request it. So I think the best case here is actually to do a download. So I've got my logic for building the image URL from the attachment identifier, and just for kicks, I decided to do a watch-specific version of it. So I'll get a slightly smaller image, it'll download a little bit faster. And then inside of the completion handler for the URL session task, I set the image up on the UI, and then I just call the completion handler when we're done. So here we go. Sending a notification. Notification, custom layout, image attachment, and everybody's favorite Princess German. So that's about all that I really had to talk about today. The sample code for the app is up on GitHub. Here's the URL for it, and I'm going to paste that into that presentation Slack room. So give you a second. As I figured, I got through this a little bit faster than I had anticipated. So, thank you for coming. Again, my name is Eric Blair. You can find me on Twitter, Jablair, Jablair, Eric@martiancraft.com. Any questions? We have time now. John hasn't come down and given me the 10-minute warning yet, so what's up?
Eric, thanks. This is great information. Can you go back, if you did, generate a local notification from the watch directly to the user?
All right, I did not have that in here, but I've got that on Xcode. So and this was actually something that Sean showed in his talk on Sunday, and I was really glad that he didn't steal too much of my thunder. Not Sean, Jeff. Okay, so this is the code for requesting a local notification, and this is actually just doing it on a 10-second delay. So I created a time interval trigger, US time interval notification trigger, 10-second delay, and I'm setting repeats to false. A couple of different triggers you can use. You can do time interval, you can set a date on it, you can do location based, and on the phone you can also do beacon based. I don't think, as far as I remember, the beacon API isn't available on the watch. So I get my notification trigger, I instantiate immutable notification content. This is where you're going to write the content of your notification. So I'm setting the title, the body, the action identifier. Then I create a request with the identifier, the content to trigger. I'm just randomly generating a UUID for my identifier. And the nice thing with the identifier is if you want to replace a notification, you can reuse the same identifier. In this case, I don't want to replace it, so I'm guaranteed uniqueness here. And then I just add that notification to the current notification center.
It's very similar to iOS.
It is. It's the same user notification framework. And that's the reason why I didn't talk about setting up local notifications. I wanted to focus on the specifics of watch and the fact that for processing this on the watch and updating your watch's app is different than processing on the phone.
So with this, you mentioned we went over the 3 different types of notifications that you can display on the watch. Can you delete the 3 here as local notification, or is it always the same?
No, it's always going to go by the notification category. Now, let's see. Inside of your did receive method for your dynamic notification, like I said, you can call completion handler with default if you want to go to the static notification. And what I'm doing here is I'm deciding to take advantage of the fact that static notifications have image attachments on WatchOS 4, so that's what I'm doing there. Maybe I'm cheating using the availability macro since it's not a new API, but it takes me the effect that I want. Alright. Alright, so I guess that's it. This was supposed to go till 4:30.
Close.
Yeah, no, I just never got the 10-minute warning from anyone. Alright, well, again, thank you. Questions, comments, tell me I'm an idiot. You know how to get in touch with me now, and I'll be around. I guess we've got one more day of this. So,